Welcome to the Deep Dive. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we really get into a specific source, pull it apart, and see what insights we can find for you.
And today we're looking at something pretty fascinating, excerpts from chapter 11 of the ancient Book of Jasher.
Right, Jasher, a text with, well, a complex history. Some view it as one of those lost books mentioned in the Hebrew Bible.
Exactly. Whether it's that specific book or another ancient collection, the stories inside give us a really unique window into certain ancient viewpoints.
Definitely. And chapter 11, specifically, draws us right into the world after the Tower of Babel. We see Nimrod still around, doing his thing, and crucially, we meet Abram for the first time. Well, Abram who becomes Abraham.
That's the core of it.
So for you, the learner listening in, our mission here is to get a handle on how this text presents things like societal changes, religious ideas, and, personal conviction.
And there are some details in here, particularly around Nimrod and Abram's early interactions. That might be quite surprising. It really paints a picture.
Okay, so let's start with Nimrod. The tower event happens, languages get confused, people scatter. But Nimrod doesn't just disappear.
Not at all. He seems to double down, really. The text says he stays in Shinar and starts building cities, 4 of them.
Babel, of course, and then Erech, Accad, and Calneh.
Right. And the names themselves are supposedly significant, tying back to the tower.
Yeah, Babel for the confusion, that makes sense. Erech, you mentioned, linked to the dispersion.
That's what the text implies, yeah. And Accad is connected to a great battle. Calneh is even more dramatic, something about the consumption of princes who rebelled against him.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like he's naming these places almost as monuments to what happened, or maybe as warnings. Definitely consolidating power.
It certainly reads that way, like he's trying to impose his narrative on the aftermath, setting up these centers and settling his people there. It's a very deliberate act of state building, you could say.
And then there's that name change, or nickname Amraphel.
Ah, yes, because his men fell at the tower. It's an interesting detail, isn't it? A constant reminder, perhaps, embedded in his very name.
But it doesn't seem to make him rethink his ways. The text is pretty clear about that.
No, it stresses his continued wickedness. And actually, it says his son Mardon was even worse.
Really? Leading people further into sin, it says.
Yeah, the text uses that phrase, "From the wicked goeth forth wickedness." It paints a picture of a dynasty really set against what the author sees as right.
It does. And then there's this quick mention, almost feels like a side note, about a war involving the families of Ham.
And Chedorlaomer of Elam ends up dominating 5 cities for 12 years, collecting taxes.
Yeah, that part. It seems a bit random, but maybe it's setting the scene, like showing this wasn't exactly a peaceful time.
I think that's a good way to look at it. It gives context. The whole region is simmering with conflict, shifting alliances, power grabs. It's not just Nimrod, it's a volatile world.
Right, it adds texture to the world Abram is about to step into.
Precisely. It shows the broader stage.
Okay, so let's shift focus to Abram. The text gives us a timeline. Nahor dies when Abram is 49. Then at 50, Abram leaves Noah's household.
Where he'd presumably been learning or living, according to older traditions, perhaps.
Could be, and he goes back to his father, Terah. But the text makes a point before that.
Yes, it explicitly states, Abram knew the Lord, and he went in his ways and instructions. So he already has this foundation before he even gets back to his dad.
Which is crucial because Terah, well, he's got a big job, captain in Nimrod's army.
A position of power and influence.
But he's still worshiping strange gods. Idols.
Exactly. So you have this immediate tension. The son follows the Lord, the father serves Nimrod and worships idols, right there in the same household.
You can see where this is going. And it doesn't take long. Abram walks into his father's house, sees these 12 idols.
Big ones and little ones, apparently.
And his reaction is intense. He basically vows on the spot, I'm destroying these within 3 days.
It's not a slow burn of doubt. It's immediate rejection. A powerful conviction hits him.
But he doesn't just smash them instantly. He tries something. Well, creative first.
Yes, the meat offering.
He asks Terah, who made everything? And Terah points to the idols, these guys.
Which is Abram's cue. He prepares some really nice savory meat.
And puts it in front of the idols, basically saying, okay, creators, dig in.
And he sits there all day, watching, waiting.
Nothing happens, obviously. He tries again the next day. Same result.
It's such a practical, almost methodical way of demonstrating their powerlessness. He's showing, not just telling. The silence of the idols is the whole point.
And that's when it clicks for Abram, or maybe Solidifies what he already knew. No voice, no hearing, no movement. Just lumps of wood and stone.
And the text says he becomes clothed with the Spirit of God at that moment. It's presented as a divine affirmation of his realization.
And then he lets loose. Condemns his father, condemns the whole generation for bowing down to things that can't do anything.
It's a powerful indictment. He's moved from observation to outright confrontation.
Then comes a hatchet. He smashes all the idols.
Yeah.
Except the biggest one.
And then the clever bit. He sticks the hatchet in the hand of that remaining big idol.
Brilliant, really. Sets the stage perfectly.
So Terah comes home, sees the mess, broken idols everywhere, and he's furious, naturally. What happened here?
And Abram, completely deadpan, basically says, oh, well, I offered them some meat, and they started fighting over it. The big one got angry and smashed all the others.
It's audacious. He's using Terah's own belief system against him.
Terah immediately calls him out. You're lying. I made these. They can't move or fight.
Which is exactly Abram's point.
Precisely. Abram turns it right back on him.
So why do you serve them then? Why worship things you admit have no power?
He doesn't stop there either. He brings up the flood. Reminds Terah what happened to previous generations who went down the path of worshiping false gods.
He's really pleading with him, isn't he? Leave this. Serve the real God, the one who actually created everything.
It's a mix of logic, historical precedent, and, well, passionate appeal. But Terah's not having it. Instead of listening,
he runs straight to the boss, to King Nimrod.
Yep. Tells Nimrod everything Abram did and said. Essentially turns his own son in.
And frames it as Abram doing evil that needs to be stopped by law. It shows how deeply invested Terah is in the status quo, in Nimrod's system.
Protecting the idols over his son's, well, spiritual arguments.
The clash between tradition and this new, challenging conviction.
So the scene shifts. Abram is dragged before King Nimrod, his princes, and Terah is there too. High stakes.
Definitely. The ultimate authority in that land.
Nimrod asks Abram, what's this I hear? What did you do to your father's gods?
And Abram repeats the story. The big one did it.
Which must have sounded absurd to Nimrod, too. He asked the same thing Terah did, essentially. Do you really expect me to believe they have the power to do that?
And this is where Abram really turns the tables on the king himself.
Yeah, he basically says, if you know they have no power, why do you serve them? Why do you mislead your whole kingdom?
He draws this sharp contrast, these lifeless statues, versus the living God who created the heavens and the earth, the one who holds the power of life and death.
He doesn't pull any punches. Calls Nimrod foolish, simple, and ignorant, right to his face.
Imagine the scene, accusing the king himself of misleading everyone.
And again, he brings up the flood. This is what happens. Remember the consequences.
It's an incredibly bold move. He's not just challenging the idols anymore. He's challenging Nimrod's entire worldview and his legitimacy as a ruler who supports this worship.
And he finishes with a direct warning. Turn away from this evil, serve the true God, or face destruction.
And then silence. He just concludes his speech, leaves it hanging there.
Wow. Quite a chapter. So let's try to pull back and summarize the main takeaways from this dive into Jasher 11.
Well, first you get this picture of Nimrod actively rebuilding, reshaping his power base after Babel, even using city names symbolically. It's quite political.
Right. Then there's the introduction of Abram, not as a blank slate, but someone already connected to the Lord, setting up that immediate conflict with his idolatrous family background.
And the core of it really is that detailed, dramatic confrontation. First with Terah, then escalating to King Nimrod himself. It's all about rejecting idolatry.
That scene with Abram offering meat to the idols, that's pretty unforgettable. Such a concrete way to show their emptiness.
It really is a very practical theology lesson, you might say.
So for you listening, we hope this quick tour through Jasher 11 gives you a feel for these ancient perspectives on, well, rebuilding society, the beginnings of monotheistic ideas fighting against polytheism, and just the sheer guts it took for one person to stand up.
Any aha moments? Maybe seeing how old this argument against idols really is. Or just thinking about Abram's courage against both his father and his king.
It definitely makes you think. Which leads us to that final thought to leave you with.
Considering Abram's actions here, this bold challenge to the powers that be, how do people throughout history stand up against prevailing beliefs? What does it cost them? What does it change?
Yeah, what's the power and maybe the peril of individual conviction when it pushes against the grain of society?